But it was a case of, well, I'm willing to see how he does. I'm not going to rule him out completely. And we will stop that there. Drop the trailer off and we'll go and put the weight on the back. So that we're all set up to do more work later. Oops. For a heavy tractor, I think this is classed as a heavy tractor, although the horsepower is what I would consider medium. But it's a little bit flighty, I must admit. Okay, we'll park this here. We'll turn the lights off, we'll turn those lights off, we'll turn the engine off, and we'll jump out. And we'll put the forks on the ground. There we go. I should probably have the engine running for that, but whatever. I mean, it's why I left England in the first place, was because yeah, I'm fine paying my taxes, but I was running my own company, and the new government decided, well, you're effectively an employee of your clients. So we're going to treat you as their employee, but they don't have to. So all the tax that they pay on your behalf, if you were their employee, you're going to have to pick up that tab. And yeah, so rather than pay 20% on my profits, so I paid myself a salary, which was normal taxation, because it's income. And then I had expenses and training costs and legal costs and finance or accountancy costs. And those were all costs of my business. So no tax on those. And then I paid tax on everything that got left over. Which, fine. Don't have a problem with that. And then they said, no. Your revenue, you have to pay 50% tax on that. And that comes back as a, well, hang on a minute. 50% of my revenue is my costs. And you want more than 50%? At that point, I can't afford to pay my salary. I can't afford to pay myself minimum wage because of the amount of money the government wanted. So at that point we said, well, we fought it. And yeah, that was a thing. We did fight it. And we got a lot of politicians involved against it. But in the end, it just boiled down to, yeah, we're going ahead with it anyway. We challenged it in the European Court. And done. Yeah. Let's water the sheep. So at that point, all of the British Commonwealth citizens, people from Australia, New Zealand, India, Pakistan, just said, well, it was nice knowing you. They all left, closed down their businesses, and didn't pay their final tax bill. A lot of my peers went back to full-time work rather than running their own company, because it's a hassle running your own company. There's a lot of extra stuff you have to do that you don't get paid for. And then okay, engine on, thing on, step up. The rest of them emigrated, and I was one of the ones that emigrated. I just said, not doing this. You're taking the piss. If I work hard to earn my money, and you want 50% of that, that's not on. Oops. So, wife and I came to America. Okay, going to do this from overhead so I can actually see where I've been. Although it's a little difficult in this light, I must admit. Now, I do have GPS on this, but I really don't need to use it right now because you can see what you're doing. I fitted GPS for when I'm doing spraying late in the season when the crop's grown. Yeah, pretty much that was it. Yeah, there were hundreds of us who were protesting this, and we took our business and we left. Now, there were heavy rumours that the legislation was sponsored by some large corporates who do consulting work. And the thing was for a client to hire me was about a third of the cost of hiring someone like Anderson's. And my skill level was higher than the typical person that Anderson's would hire out. You know, Anderson's are taking some fresh college student and hiring them out at $120 an hour. And I'm hiring out at 40. And yeah, obviously, well, that's not fair. It's perfectly fair. You get what you pay for. You know, in that case, you get better if you pay less. And a lot of companies realise that. So they were heavily into contract, you know, when they needed a consultant, they would bring in a private consultant because we were generally better. Except we worked, you know, most of the time we were one man. So if you want a major project done, you're probably going to have to hire 2 or 3 of us, and we're going to have to work together. But you hire one, and, you know, I had a good working relationship with a number of consultants. And so when someone says, oh, we need 4 people, you know, if you brought me in first, I could say, well, there's this guy, this guy, this guy, give them a call and see what they say. But, yeah, completely destroyed the independent consultant market. And, you know, some people were able to get away with it. But the government, I think they were a little bit surprised by the opposition, because the previous year they'd done a similar thing to building contractors. And they'd snuck this legislation in through the annual budget talk. And, you know, because they didn't actually mention it in the announcement, they just, you know, it's on the back page in small print that we're going to screw over the building contractors. They didn't notice until it became law, at which point it was sort of, yeah, you're screwed. You know, you've got to start following all these new rules and paying us so much more tax. And that destroyed the independent business trade, or building trade, sorry. And so the following year they said, well, that was easy, let's do it to the IT people. Well, what they didn't bank on was the IT people are internet savvy, know where to look up what legislation you're proposing, know how to you know, digest it and say this doesn't look right. They know how to contact each other, and they know how to kick up a stink. And so all of a sudden the government's like, what do you mean this bunch of IT people are now taking us to European court? How did that happen? How did they find out? This was supposed to be easy. So no, it's not going to be easy. You want to make my life a misery? Get out of here. And so it still passed. The European Court of Human Rights or whatever decided that we should be happy being peasants, and we shouldn't be challenging our rightful rulers. And as I said, many of us just said, well, screw that for Game of Tin Soldiers. You want more tax from me? Tell you what, you're never going to get another penny of tax from me. And since that day, I have never paid a dime in British taxes. Because unlike America, you don't have to pay taxes in Britain if you don't live there. American citizens have to pay taxes wherever they live. And because of all the added banking stuff that's going on with the IRS, I closed down my UK bank account last year because they started writing me letters and saying, well, since you live in America and the IRS are interested in all your money, we're going to have to charge you for filling out IRS forms. So we said, to be fair, we don't need the account. We'll just transfer the money all over here and close it. So we did, and the account's closed, and I don't have to worry about calling the bank every so often because I can't do internet banking because it doesn't work with my phone. I have been here. It would be 20 years. We are into our 21st year here. So, of course, as you can tell, I'm working up a very good American accent. And you can hardly tell me from a native. Yes. Yeah, pretty much the... I missed out on the entire year 2000 IT panic. I quit my old job just before my employer at the time got into we've got to change everything so it works with Y2K. And I became a consultant, and none of the work I did was Y2K related. Some of the companies, we've already done our Y2K stuff. This is just projects we need outside of that. One of them was in the process of doing their Y2K changes, but they probably wisely decided we want our people doing the Y2K thing because they're going to have to support it. You consultants, you're going to be out the door. However, that one particular company was changing their chart of accounts, and so they wanted a consultant in to help them reorganize their financials. Now, I'm not really a financial guy, but I knew the software. So that's all I need. That's the experience, the expertise they wanted was, we know how to do it, we just need you to tell us, if we explain it to you, you need to tell us how to do it within the confines of the application we're using. Yeah, that's easy. That I can do, and write some reports for us. Yeah, I can do that. Tell me what you want the reports to say, and I'll make reports that say that. And that's a good company to work for. I like them. They produced alcohol. And so, I think the Monday of my last week, IT manager comes over and he says, here's a box, come downstairs with me. So we went downstairs and he said, okay, fill the box with alcohol from the staff store. So, okay, fine. So he said, okay. And he paid for it, and I left with a bunch of booze. Because he actually explained to me, you've done a really good job here. We really liked having you here, and we'd like to give you a bonus. But if we give you a monetary bonus, then your agent will take a cut of it. And we'd like you to get all of what we'd like to give you. So, okay. No problem. I can do that. But it's fun working for yourself. I mean, the fun bit is 5 o'clock comes, it's not my problem unless you want to pay me for it. Unlike corporate work where, you get paid for 40 hours a week plus any time we deem you need to put in over and above that. You won't get paid extra. We just expect it. But consultants get paid for the work they do. So, it's sort of, our computer system's gone wrong. It's 10 o'clock in the evening. That's time and a half. We'll get someone else to fix it for you. Okay, thank you. Yes, and that put paid to my my flying lessons. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened, and we were all grounded for about 6 months for flight training, and then we're running at 200. Okay, that's fine. And then the flight school I'd been using went belly up for 6 months of no revenue. And so that was it, done. No more flying. And then we moved to Texas, and then we moved to Michigan, and I really haven't got back into it. I know it's a lot more expensive than it used to be. And as for the housing market crash in 2008, saw that one coming. In the UK, back in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher had this wonderful idea of people who we have in the UK. There are council houses which are owned by the local authority, and they rent them out to people who can't afford their own housing, or at least they did at the time. Now, the council housing went up during the 1950s. After the Second World War, there was a lot of rebuilding going on, and the councils just sort of said, we need to put up some cheap prefab buildings to house all the people that were left without homes during the Second World War. Plus the baby boom, so there's lots of people coming that we're going to need to house as well. So, council houses. And during the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher said, you know what, if you've lived in your house for 20, 30 years, you should be able to buy it. And so that went on during the 80s, and people bought their houses. And part of the reason they didn't buy houses, or they were in council houses, was because they couldn't really afford to repay a mortgage, or at least not a serious mortgage. So it all boiled down to, you can't see where that line's going that way. A lot of mortgages got defaulted on, and banks were loaning to these people, and unfortunately caused a market crash in the early 90s. And that's where I got my apartment from in England, was It was a repossession by someone who really shouldn't have been buying their own house to begin with. And so I got it dirt cheap, but the whole housing market in the UK crashed because of that. And so when I was working for... Oh, that was the wrong button. When I was working for a mortgage servicing company in the US during the early 2000s, same thing going on. We're lending money to people who are not well placed to repay it. People can lie about their incomes, not have to pay any mortgage for, or any serious mortgage for 5 years, and in 5 years they can refinance it, except that never quite worked out. So the market crash of 2008 was not a surprise for me, because I'd already seen it happen in the UK 10 years earlier. I mean, I didn't fare well in it, yeah, but I wasn't surprised it happened. But don't ask me if I knew it was going to happen. No, I didn't know it was going to happen. There was no way to tell, unless you were more business oriented. I'm an IT guy. I look at patterns, and so when it all happened, it was a case of, yeah, I'm not surprised. Not I saw this coming. I'm not surprised. So, okay, so that bit there is probably failure to germinate. Where do we see? That's... Yeah, and there's another one there. So this is where we're not going to get any crop growing in these two patches, because the seeds were too cold or too wet or too something. So why did I move to California? I moved to California because that's where the job was. My wife is from Ohio, and we'd been married just shy of 2 years when all this went down in the UK. And so then what happened was she wanted to come back to America anyway, because she wanted to visit her family at least occasionally. And I was a little unimpressed with our new Tony Blair government, and so I'm like, yeah, okay, let's look into it. So we started the application for my green card, and initially that fell through because I didn't have a job in the US, and you have to have US income, and it's something Arthur's struggling with at the moment with Simone. If you are emigrating to the US, you cannot be a burden on the social security system. At least if you're doing it legally, you cannot be a burden on the social security system. Now, if you swim across the Rio Grande, then all bets are off. So we had to get my mother-in-law to sponsor me for my green card. So I got approved. In the meantime, I am working at Technicolor, who, among other things, are producers at the time for DVDs and, video cassettes. So, every time Disney comes along and says, yay, Lion King's out on DVD, or Technicolor produce hundreds of thousands of DVDs of The Lion King in order for them to sell. So that was their business. Now, I don't know what their business is today, because since, face it, most movie and TV show sales are through streaming services and what have you, and don't involve any hard media at all. But that's where I was working. I was working with two guys I'd worked with before. One of them was from the drinks company that gave me all the drinks. I think he got some drinks as well when he left. He left a couple of weeks after I did. But yeah, there were three of us ended up on Technicolor. We were getting on fine. And when all this problem with the taxation came down, a couple of them approached the IT manager in Technicolor and basically said, look, we enjoy working here. Because of all this problem with the taxation coming up, we'd like to go full-time. Would you employ us? And he said yes. And at that point, after sort of the second guy had gone into his office and asked the same thing, he started speaking to each of the consultants separately. So he called me into the office and he said, look, I've got a load of guys here who are wanting to go full-time. Are you interested? And I said, well, to be fair, I'm actually looking at emigrating to the United States. And I'm in the process, but I don't know when that's going to happen. And I was coming to the end of the 6-month contract. And I said, look, if you're willing, could we go month to month? And when I get my green card approval, I'll tell you, and a month later I'll leave. And if you don't want me anymore, you can tell me, and I'm gone. And so he said, yeah, that's fine. It's because, at the time it was a short-term thing. I think I ended up working an extra 3 months there. And while I was working there, the guy, one of the other consultants, said to me, so I understand you want to go to the United States. Are you interested in a job in California? Because I've been approached by somebody who, has vacancies in California, and I'm not interested because I have a big dog and I'm not going to take him with me. And I like my dog, so I'm staying put. So I said, well, yeah, okay, shoot me the details and I'll give him a call. So gave him a call, went for an interview in a hotel in central London and got the job. And I transferred straight there. Now most of the other people I worked with who were British at that company, they went in on work visas. And so the way they worked it, they were basically, it was an American company doing business in Europe. They took people over to the US for 1 month. And, as, quotes, training. Because you're allowed to come into this country for 1 month of training with an American company, then you have to go home. So the American company were bringing people over, training them, and then sending them back to the UK to work in their client office over there until they got their green card, until they got their work visas. And because I was approved for a green card, at that point, I didn't have to go through that rigmarole. So I never actually worked in the UK client office. As soon as I was approved green card, I was on a plane to California and in the office the next day, working full time. And I did that for approximately 5 years. Was it 5 years? 99? No, it was about 2003, and then they decided, we want to transfer you to California. Texas. So I did an internal company transfer to Texas, and worked in Texas for a couple of years until the company went belly up. And as I said, they fired me before the company went under, and I ended up in Michigan working for Borders, who disappeared too. That was a contract as well. Michigan weather is very similar to the UK for the most part. And that's probably primarily because of all the water that surrounds it. It's a very temperate. It doesn't get, for the most part, it doesn't get too cold. It doesn't get too warm. It rains fairly frequently, and that's to do with the Great Lakes. In England, that's to do with all the wet water that surrounds it. Now, we do get much more snow here than we do in the UK. We could go 6 years with no snow, and then all of a sudden, yay, snow. For a 7th year. Oh, there's the dog. But Michigan, we tend to get snow far more frequently, but it's not. Gas is done. Maintenance is done. We can put this away until next year, I think. I could attach it to the logging trailer, but I think we're okay with the Fendt out there for now. But yeah, as I said, more snow, more frequent snow, but it's not anywhere as in the UK you get usually about 1 week where there's snow on the ground at the worst.